And June, you can begin.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining today. I'll cover a variety of different information. I mentioned this. I've got some handouts that I'll share electronically after the presentation.
We came back.
Oh, K-State, great. Okay, so you can hear me, K-State?
Can you hear us, Mary?
I hear you, Sarah.
Great, perfect.
Great, okay. So the only tricky part for me is the share screen, and I think that's going to work okay. We'll figure that out. It looks fairly easy to do. So I'm going to cover information today. I represent the Career Center here at Emporia State University. All of your campuses have a very solid Career Center as well. We work with them as a Regents sister institution, so we know a lot of the folks in your Career Centers as well. So I'm hoping that you've connected with your Career Center, and they've got a variety of different resources too. So the stuff I go through today, feel free to reach back out to me if you need, follow-up questions, and I'll give time for questions today too. But understand that there's great resources on your campus as well that will look very similar to what we offer. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We'll see if y'all can see it.
That one? Yeah. I don't even.
Okay. She thought she got it.
She got it.
There it is.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what we're going to cover this afternoon. I'm going to kind of give a working definition of a CV. We're going to talk about the outline and purpose and use of a CV, contrast CV versus resume. Sarah talked about really the use of a resume as well. We'll talk about the differences between those two documents. We will talk about the fundamentals of the format and length, so you're going to get an idea of how to put those together. Talk about the content that goes on a typical curriculum vitae. And these can be very extensive, as you'll see on our various samples. They can be up to, some of your faculty have CVs that are 18 to 20 pages in length. It's a very comprehensive document. We will talk about the writing and review process as an important piece of this. I'll show you a couple of sample documents, talk about some resources, and then we'll hopefully have a little time for some question and answer at the end. So that's really what I'd like to cover today. See if I can advance this. Here's how a CV is defined. It's really one's course of life. So when we talk about a comprehensive document, it's everything that goes on this document. And it really outlines your background and your credentials for the field. Typically, it's used in the fields of academia and the sciences, which is really the tracks that you're on, of course. Many of you, it sounds like, are thinking about medical school, professional school, PhD programs. But certainly jobs in the sciences as well. So this CV is going to be very important in that process. Sometimes you will, in job postings or opportunities, people will call it a resume. What they might really mean is a CV. So you just have to carefully read through what they're looking for in the document and use your best judgment. And sometimes those titles are used interchangeable, resume and CV, but they are different documents. So let's compare and contrast these things. First of all, when we talk about a CV and a resume, again, this will be the handout that y'all get after this presentation. A CV is really a comprehensive document, can be very long, and your readers, whoever you're submitting it to, are going to take the time to read through this document. That's pretty different from a resume in the industry sort of job posting. So achieving that 20-second read, which I'll talk about in a minute, is not really the essential goal of a CV. The CV is to represent all of the credentials that you have in the field. Resume, on the other hand, is really a snapshot of your qualifications as they relate to that job or the industry. The goal is to achieve that 20-second read. When someone reads that resume, they need to be able to navigate it quickly. They need to get to the most relevant information very quickly. And they're not going to take time with a 10-page document. So the definition of the two documents is very different. The purpose and the use of these documents is different as well. As I mentioned, the CV is really used for academia, the sciences, grad or professional school, and the resume is really for industry type related jobs. So they are somewhat different. Here's a little bit about the format that's useful to know. The CV should be visually appealing. It should catch one's attention, but it's not quite as essential as the resume. So when we talk about the document itself, marketing is important on a CV in terms of the reader having the ability to get to the key information, but it's not like you have to grab their attention very quickly. So it's not necessarily a marketing document. It is a list of all of your achievements, and we'll talk a minute about the content. Resume, on the other hand, does need to be eye-catching. When someone in industry reads it, they may have 200 to 300 applicants for one position. So that HR director, that initial screen of your document on a resume, they are looking for any reason to eliminate you from that pool of applicants. So when there's misspellings, when there are grammar errors, when it doesn't achieve that 20-second read, that sometimes can be enough to get you eliminated from the pool. They really want to narrow down that pool very quickly. Whereas a CV, again, that reader is going to take the time to navigate it, to identify key competencies, key content, that sort of thing. So the format is a little bit different. The length of the document, as we talked about, length is not a priority when it comes to the CV. It should really be a full history of your background. As we mentioned, these are very, very long documents. As just a fun fact, you should ask your faculty member advisor that's sitting with you, how long is your CV? And you'll see these documents are very, very extensive. The resume is typically 1 to 2 pages unless you have extensive work experience that's relevant to the industry. Again, a marketing document in a succinct manner. Let's talk about content. You're going to see this on the samples that you look at here in just a moment. Here's a CV. Look at that list. Full contact information, education, thesis, dissertation description, title, research detail, awards, fellowships, honors, grants, publications, presentations, submissions. Even if you have submitted something for consideration for publication, those all belong on your CV at this point. It's any activity in the field that you've been involved with. So if you've submitted anything for consideration to either a conference, a presentation, a publication, all of that information goes on your document. Creative work, research experience, and interests, those are really important. All of you in the field you're going into, which is very broad and diverse, research is going to be key on your CV. So take the time to really outline that. Who was your faculty advisor? Give us some detail on that research opportunity. Give us the title, give us your findings. You know, we're going to take the time to read through all of that information. Teaching is critical. Really, no matter what you go into on your CV, you should list any teaching opportunities that you've had, presentations, academic service. So when we talk about academic service, again, when you talk to your faculty members, their charge is to be involved in a number of different service opportunities, both around campus, but also in the community. So the readers for any position in grad program and medical program are going to look for that type of service. What committees have you served on? Which committees have you chaired? What have you done with the community? So it could be things as simple as, I have a volunteer opportunity that I'm doing that's not really necessarily related to my field. Those things are important, and you want to put them on your CV as well. Any sort of professional training that you've gotten, languages that you speak are important, unique, and different. Work experience, international travel is important, and it's a way that you can distinguish yourself, and that belongs on your CV. It could be a 2-week experience. It could be our sea turtle over spring break research that we do at Emporia State. It could be a 6-week summer experience. All of those things belong on your document to show a number of different skills, your interest in international, your interest in research, your adaptability, flexibility. As we go abroad in different countries, it shows that you're very adaptable. Those are important skills. It also might show a committee reading that you are willing to take a group of students abroad, or a group of doctors in their residencies. You're willing to travel abroad to do that kind of training. Professional memberships, this membership as an institutional membership, any kind of membership that you have and you hold, those should be on your CV as well. And then finally, references, people that can be called on your behalf, that can demonstrate your ability and your credentials. So here's the thing, and often our students don't kind of put this together, but you must ask permission from all your references. Don't just assume that your faculty advisor is willing to serve as a reference. Probably he or she is, but it's really important to ask for permission before you ever list them on there. The last thing that they want to do is get a call or an email that's really out of the blue. They don't know that you've listed them on a document or as a reference. And then, when we get those calls, we're not usually in a very good mood because it kind of surprises us. So you need to be sure and ask permission from your references. You need to have full contact information, and you should indicate how you know that person, what the relationship is. This is my faculty advisor, this is my research mentor, whatever those relationships are. Now, look on the right side, you guys. Resume, much shorter list, right? So we're going for a resume. When we're going to achieve that 20-second read, we need to focus on the things that are most relevant to that job description, most relevant to that industry, and we do not want that comprehensive document. So that's really where your faculty and your career center can be very helpful in identifying what that job description is looking for and how you compare that resume down so that it's achieving really that relevance that you're looking for. All right, now here's the writing and review process. I sort of narrowed it down to 4 steps in this writing and review process. So we've covered things like the content, the goal of that, the purpose and use of a CV versus a resume. Let's talk about sort of this writing process. There's a number of ways that you can really get to this first step. Some of you like to generate these ideas and your experience independently and then run it by someone. Some of you like to sit down with a faculty advisor or another professional staff member and let them help you identify those skills and competencies. Whatever works best for you, that's really the first step, is what do I have to offer? What do I have to market out to either a grad program, a professional school, or a job? And if you take the time to identify those skills, it's much easier then to begin the writing process. So what I often do and encourage students to do is to take a very large whiteboard, just write out and brainstorm all of those things you can think of that you have experience in, skills in, competencies, and just start with a very, very broad list, and that will make your writing quite a bit easier. The second step then, after you've identified those competencies, is to identify who am I writing this for? Who's going to read this document, and why would they care about this information? So, as you research a graduate school, you need to identify what are their research, what are their talking points, their pride points, where your experience is going to match what it is that they're looking for. So you need to understand your audience. Who's going to read this document, and why should they even care to read on? And how does it align with, how do you connect with that program or that experience? The third step is really to draft that document. So you're going to take your skills and competencies, you're going to identify what it is that you're looking for, and you're going to merge the two together. And that's how you start drafting your document. And it will help you also understand how to organize the information. So if you are applying to a Division I research institution, that research needs to pop out. And so maybe you want to move that up ahead of some of the other things listed down below. And so understanding what their priorities are in terms of the program will help you identify how to organize the information as well. Step 4 then is to the review process. This one's really critical. Whether it's a 1 to 2 page resume, whether it's a 10-page CV, you need to have many eyes on this document, taking a look at it, giving you feedback. We do this every day, all day. About 50% of our business in our shop in the Career Center is resume reviews, CV reviews, and cover letter reviews. And we see almost all the time minor grammar errors, typos, misspellings. Many times we see on the contact information, maybe a student has left off a digit of their phone number. They have misspelled their email address. When we're talking about opportunities, if the committee can't reach back out and offer you that interview, you're immediately going to be eliminated, or most of the time. They're not going to work hard to track you down unless you're really a rock star candidate. So as you have multiple eyes on your document, it will help you identify all of those errors that are coming up. Now, here's the thing with getting reviews as well. Let's say you line up 5 faculty members and you request that all 5 of them take a look at this document. You're going to get slightly different preferences in that process. And some students, they throw up their hands and say, this is really confusing. June said this, and Joel said this, and Robin said this, and this is the feedback I got from 5 different people. You will get varying opinions, but in the end, your document becomes much better, and you start to make choices about, oh, I could see why I might want to do that, or you know what, it's a judgment on my part. I don't think that I'm going to include that or not. But you need that kind of feedback in this review process. So as you can see from these 4 steps, this takes some time to do. So if you are applying to, you all have various timelines probably, but if you are applying to graduate school now and it's a May 1 deadline, boy, that's going to be a quick turnaround and getting this document ready. If you start the process in the fall, applying for graduate school for the following fall, I would allow 4 to 6 weeks for this writing process. And then once you've got your document in place, you simply add information as you gain those experiences. So this really does take quite a bit of time. When you start early in writing this document, it helps you identify where the gaps are as well. So let's say, that research needs to be on your CV. And so you put that research experience on there and you have 1, and your goal is really to have 3 or 4. It helps you identify where those gaps are. And the earlier you do this, the earlier you can identify where those gaps are, knowing that's important. Same with publications, same with presentations, a number of things that it helps you the earlier you start on this process. All right, so let's take a look at samples, and I will see if I can share those couple of documents as well.
What?
All right, we'll see if this works here.
I wonder why I went to her. I went to him.
He was the last one we voiced.
This sample CV, can everyone see that? Ross Geller, anybody a Friends fan? Okay, and this comes from our KU buddies, all of my friends at University of Kansas and their career center. So this is a sample that really they have displayed that is helpful to look at, I think. And again, I'm going to share these documents after this presentation, and you can ask questions about it. Here's a sample of a CV. This one is, I don't know, 5 pages maybe. I'm not sure how long this one is, but education is at the top. Now, as you can see, this person has a PhD, but they've listed a number of different things down below. Institution name, dissertation title, advisor for that dissertation, month and year of graduation, location. Typically at the graduate level, you don't need to list your GPA. We understand that it has to be very high to continue on in the program. So you don't necessarily have to put a GPA on your CV. You're going to see them listed in reverse chronological order. We want to see your highest degree listed first. And if it's in progress, no problem. Graduation. And then this month and year of previous degree. Now you're going to see research experience come next. This is a pretty lengthy area. So you're going to see their GRE is listed here, or GRA, excuse me, Graduate Research Assistant. You're going to see their, they've got several experiences there. On a resume, it's not going to be this long. On a CV, it is very extensive. At the top of every page, I would encourage you to put your last name in page 2, page 3, put the pagination at the top. These documents are going to get separated. They need to put them back in order. Here's your research. Here's your teaching. Again, expand on that teaching. This individual has, looks like, yeah, Blue Sky School District. So they've got some experience at the college level as well as at the high school, secondary level. Here's our publications. We're going to use the standard format on your publications and manuscripts. Meetings and presentations. Some of you have simply attended conferences, and then you want to list some. You might call this conferences attended, or conferences and presentations, or meetings and conferences. You know, if you've simply been attending conferences, good for you. That takes some initiative, and a lot of sometimes it takes some of your own money to attend those kinds of things, and so they like to see that initiative. But you can call this having a number of different things if you don't have presentation experience. Hopefully you do. Leadership experience, very beneficial skill to have. Readers like to see that. Specialized training. This will look different for lots of you. Medical experience. Medical observation. CNAs, any of those kinds of things you can throw on here depending on the field that you're going into. International travel, international research, all those kinds of things. Technical skills are very important. If you have some of those lab technical skills or software skills, make sure you're including them under a technical skills section. Here's our professional memberships. And they should be current memberships. If you have not belonged to an organization for a couple of years, I would drop that off. I wouldn't continue to list that. I would list current memberships that you hold. And then, of course, scholarships and fellowships, academic achievements, notable kinds of experiences that show your academic ability and the ability to handle academic rigor is really important. This one is just 4 pages in length. I don't want to make you dizzy by scrolling all through it, but we'll go back up to the top. So there's one sample. Let me show you another sample, which is from Rice University. I'm not a big fan of this column format. It makes it difficult for me to read it, but this might be, you might have a preference for this sort of organization as well. But this just gives you another look at ways to organize information. This one has university service. That's what I talked about, your committee memberships. So if you've been a student representative on, if you've been a president of biology club, if you've been a student senator with your student government, all of that kind of campus service.
I've seen it for residency before, people created copywriting job searches and like that. But we're not just doing it.
All right, so there's our samples. And I think my screen is still shared here. Resources, as we talked about, really your career center is a great resource. These things like from KU and Rice, I simply went out and found great samples of CVs as well. I will send you the rubric comparing CV and resume, and then I will send you a couple of different samples. So you'll have some references to take a look at. But I am happy to answer any questions. That might be kind of a good next step. You might have some individual questions about this information or things I'd be glad to answer or kind of direct you to the right resources if you have some questions.
Questions? Jefferson, ask a question.
Hey, Jen.
Yeah.
on, we're trying to find further away if it works better. It's giving us feedback. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can.
All right, so I have a question about sort of technical skills or lab skills that students learn as part of their classes. Oftentimes students are trying to convey a list of things that they've learned to do in various lab classes. Would you suggest putting that as a separate category or listing that under just general skills? How would you incorporate that into a CV?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like the headings, actually, a technical skills or a lab skills section. Anymore, it's really, CVs and resumes are really skills based. And so whether it's paid, whether it's unpaid, whether it's part of a course, whether it's part of a research experience as an undergrad, the reader is going to be able to tell a snapshot of where that student is at the time. So if they're just completing their bachelor's degree, the reader's going to know that those things are going to be typically gained in a classroom kind of setting. So I don't think they necessarily need a descriptor. When the student gets to the interview for that program, they can further delineate, where did you gain those kinds of skills? But I think I like the headings that are more skills based and competency based because it really jumps out to the reader and helps them organize the information.
So I have another quick question.
Yeah.
I was looking at a resume the other day, and it used very creative language for a babysitting job. So she was a babysitter, but she wrote on her resume that it was freelance childcare services. And so I wonder if you have any examples like that.
Sure, we see that a lot, quite a bit actually. So here's the thing, it was on a resume, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a resume is more flexible than it used to be. It allows you to drop off some of those experiences that are less relevant and maybe back a ways. So if that student was going into a teaching position, applying for a teaching field, I think that's relevant. If they're not, it might show responsibility, but I think they can probably list something that's more relevant at that time. But I definitely have seen that on resume, but it's more, we encourage them to keep it on if it's directly relevant to a classroom teaching position or something like that. It shows that they've been responsible with children. Other than that, if it's not relevant, I would probably drop that off. Yeah, there's a lot of creativity.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had seen some creativity like that in the area of science resumes. Again, maybe sort of related back to, somebody learned how to do PCR in a class, and maybe that is a way to fancy that up or something.
Yeah, I've seen a few students that have put sort of, they've called it an entrepreneurial experience when really they're just doing transactions on eBay, quite honestly. So I've seen that as well, and I don't think that's quite appropriate. So we've seen a lot of those things pop up. The other thing that we're talking about, as we talk about CVs and resumes, the next step is often the interview for the program, which really isn't the focus of this workshop, but everyone, I encourage you to do a practice interview or two or more with either your faculty members or your career center or both. So on our campus, Dr. Moore does for medical students, pre-med students, he will, upon request, he will arrange a panel interview with career center staff and himself, and he can cover many of those medical entrance questions that he's aware of. And we're going to cover a lot of the behavior-based interviewing questions that are going to come up as well in that interview. So many times for either jobs or admission to graduate school, you're going to have an interview involved. Do a practice interview beforehand because that'll make or break your candidacy. Your CV can be awesome and rock star and jump out in a pool, but if you can't interview and showcase those interpersonal skills, you really want to advance in the search. So make sure you do a practice interview as well.
Can you talk on yours? We're done.
Okay.
you might have.
So does anybody have any other questions about anything? Have you all written CVs yet or started your CVs? Some people I think have had classes that have started CVs.
Great. Great.
Nobody has anything. Have you guys seen your coordinator's CVs? I'd be curious to know, Dr. Burnett, if your CV is similar to this CV, one of the CVs that we found here, or if you follow like NIH guidelines for CVs. Or...
Well, so NIH also has a thing called a biographical sketch that is a little bit different than a CV. So I have that. Yeah, I would say it's pretty similar to that. It's not quite as organized as nicely, but it's pretty close. You could probably use some work.
Well, I am going to encourage all of the mentors that are participating today to share your CVs with your students so they can get an idea of what those look like. And if you're brave enough, send them to me and I can post them for students to look at. I will post my CV so that you can criticize it if you'd like. I'm not saying that mine is good enough for you to emulate, but just for a point of reference. I guess if nobody has any other questions, then I sent out the materials before the seminar, so we already have them here. I'll post them on the web for those that might not have been able to attend our seminar today, if that's okay with you. And in Emporia, I'm sure if you have any questions that you guys can go to June, and everybody else, if you have issues or questions with your CVs, please contact your career services. That's what they're there for. And I want to remind everybody, one thing I forgot to say at the beginning, is we just got a brand new website up this week. So go check that out and kind of give us your opinion of how you feel about it, if it's been cool and interesting or not. And it works on mobile now too, so that's good. Otherwise, like I said, this will be recorded and posted online, and we will resume our next seminar series in August, September, something like that. So, thank you guys for participating, and let's all thank June for. And we'll see you guys in a few months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What he says, like, the